What's going on, guys? We'll let a couple people come in and then we'll get started. I'm really interested to know what people think right now and what they think about the new information that's come out, the other possible investigations or other investigations that are happening into Bryan Kohberger to try to check and see if he's connected to any of the other crimes in Pennsylvania that haven't been solved yet. And what do you think about the ID situation and whose ID it was? And, what do you think? I would love to know. I would love to know what everybody's thinking right now. Whose ID do you think it was? Because I feel like they would at least have said a victim's ID if it was a victim's ID. They said a resident. Other people said there's videos where they said it was a victim. We can look. We can go check. If you know a link to a video, you can drop it and we'll check it out, or just tell me what it is and where it is, and we'll go see who calls them a victim's ID, because I've not seen that at all outside of YouTubers. What's going on, Lee? What's going on, Michelle? What's going on, Mama Stormy, Mimi 720, and Cat Spade, I'm sorry. Kate Spade. Oh, wait. Sorry I'm late. Technical difficulties. I got a new camera. Hey, Aaron. I don't know. Maybe. Hopefully we won't let you down, right? Oh, 67% of people right now are saying that Bryan Kohberger is guilty. Hey, Tammy. I'm kind of caught up on people who are saying that he's framed. I want somebody to explain to me how they know that. Like, what has happened to tell them that, or what facts it is. Like, I'm open-minded. I would love to hear about it. I would love to hear what happened that he's being framed that I've missed, because I see that there could be dirty cops. Definitely see that, but as far as cops framing him for a murder to cover up for something else, like, what evidence do we have that there was something else? I appreciate it, Lee. I did get the new camera. That's what I've been trying to get set right this whole time. I'm not, I don't know nothing about cameras. What's going on, Crisis Cast? Hey, Scarlet. Or Harlot. I'm sorry. Oh, Susu. Hey. And Dan C. I feel the ID belongs to Dylan Mortensen. Or DM is what he said, but we know. It's Dylan Mortensen. I wonder if she is who he was infatuated with. There's a lot of reasons he could have, felt some type of way about Dylan. If he thought she was, if he was attracted to her, if he didn't like her, if maybe he liked one of the other girls and she was hateful or something, or maybe he was her friend, and one of the other girls was hateful to her in his opinion, and he's just a psychopath. That's I feel like if it came out that it was Dylan's ID, I feel like that's where the story goes. That we have to find out why he had her ID, because that's the connection to the house, right? Like, we assume that he was infatuated with one of the victims. Maybe it was somebody else. Maybe he was infatuated with Dylan. Or Bethany. Cuomo actually said an ID found connected to someone from the Moscow home. So with that wording, I wonder if it wasn't even a residence, but somebody who knew them. Yeah, I understand that. But I'm pretty sure he also said a resident at another time. And everybody else has called it a resident ID. So, let's go real quick. Let's see what exactly Cuomo said. We will find it. I'm sorry. Good to see you, Nancy. Hey, Amy. Appreciate y'all coming by. Where is that video? How many days ago was that now? That's been like a week, right? I'll be way down in their videos. They post like 20 videos a day. I need that kind of grind. Goodness. More than 20 videos a day. Good evening, Allie. What's going on, Richard? You think he's guilty? Because why would anybody want to set him up and who? I feel you. That's what I would like to know. What's the issue there? Why would anybody feel like... I mean, anybody could be framed for something, right? But, like, what's the cause for them to set him up? What's the proof that somebody's setting him up, I guess, is what I'm saying. What are the clues that go to he's being set up by somebody just because there was a cop who might have lied on this case or another case? We don't even know that yet. What makes him be what points to him being framed? But I'm open to it because, I mean, stuff like that happens. Stuff happens all the time. Like, it's not, oh, this is impossible, or oh, this only happens in movies. No, they make movies about shit that really happens sometimes, and this is one of those things. So I'm open to it, but give me reasons for it. Don't just tell me, well, it's that. Why? Because I think so. It's kind of, pointless. I mean, it's your opinion. You can hold it, but if you're going to convince me of it, there's going to need to be more than that, for sure. I'm happy to finally get to do a live. Crisis cast. We don't know he ever asked if anyone else has been arrested. That's just what we've been told. Correct. We don't know none of the word of mouth stuff. None of just what came out that was said that a cop told a reporter. We don't know if any of that's true or not. You would think that they wouldn't make it up, but, a lot of people that you wouldn't think would make stuff up just start making stuff up sometimes. It's how the cookie crumbles. Oh, there's got to be a better way. They got way too many videos. I'm just now 3 days in. Let's go this way. And you do got to have a name that's just all kind of hard to spell for me. Exclusive. Now let's see. Yeah, I don't know. Goodness gracious. Alright, here's Chris Cuomo.
Pennsylvania. Police also believe they have evidence that could connect Kohberger to...
Alright, let's back it up.
Tonight, we have another exclusive set of details, and they go to two aspects. One, evidence of what was found in the places where he lived or he inhabited, okay, that may connect him to one of the victims. An ID was found connected to someone from the home in Moscow, Idaho. It was...
All right. See, that's different than what you said he said right there. Connected to someone from the home of Moscow, Idaho. What he means is 1122 King Road. I'm sure he'll say that in just a second. But connected to someone from that home. Not connected to someone of that home. He doesn't say it's their ID. Did he say it was their ID? Let's back it up real quick. Let me make sure before I talk too much.
Victims. An ID was found connected to someone from the home in Moscow, Idaho.
Right. He didn't say it was nobody's ID that lives in the home right here. He just said an ID was found that's connected to him. So, I mean, it could be just, it could be their sister's ID or brother's ID. He could have had Xana's sister's ID. Xana went to school or Xana's sister goes to school with Bryan Kohberger. So he could have had her ID. Who knows? But an ID connected. Let's go further and see.
It was found during one of the searches of Kohberger's residences, plural. So what does that mean? Well, either they found it in Washington, where he was just outside Moscow, Idaho, or in Pennsylvania. Police also believe they have evidence that could connect Kohberger to what they...
Harlot. That's exactly what you said in the quote? That it was connected to somebody from the home? Because I thought you said it was... I don't know. Maybe I'm completely lost there. But to me, that still says it's connected to a resident of the home, does it not? Am I wrong there? I could be. I mean, maybe I'm missing something there, but it's connected to a resident. So he didn't say the ID of a resident. I got what you're saying now. Thank you. Let's see if they move further, though. Because this is 6 days ago. This is when they did it. But let's see if in this time anyway he says it. Because if you read right across the screen right there, you see what that had? Why would he let's push play so we can get that out of the way.
Someone from the Moscow residence. We've reached out to the police. Due to the gag order, they can't confirm this information. But does this answer two questions? Is it a smoking gun? I never really understand what that means. Obviously, is it the murder weapon? Who is it? No. But does it connect him to a group of people he had no business to be familiar with? And does it imply that Kohberger may have had more people on his list, and that may be why they're investigating?
Okay, so that says Kohberger may have stalked Moscow home residents. So everything here is at least insinuating that a resident of that home, it was their ID. It was connected to them. Maybe he just can't say it was their ID. He can't say who it is. He can't say if it's a victim or not. Maybe he just can't say, but I feel like if it was a victim's ID, they would say it. And if it's not one of the residents' ID, then how does that point to them being stalked? I know what you're saying. I'm just deductive reasoning.
Investigating him to see if they can connect him to any other situations. Let's bring in retired FBI agent and News Nation legal contributor Jennifer Coffindaffer and high-profile trial attorney Mark Garagos. To both of your reckonings, you're familiar with the reporting and the sourcing on this. I basically have it right, yes? Nods of the head is enough?
Yes, please leave your DNA on the like button. Thank you, Lee. I appreciate it. And thank you, Harlot, for giving up my email and posting all the links in the chat. I appreciate all the mods.
Okay, so from the investigative side, look, Garagos hates doing anything that's favorable to me. You see that? Even nodding his head. He didn't really want to. He was fighting it. So from the investigative side, Jennifer Coffindaffer, I'll start with you. You find ID from one of the victims in a place that was controlled, inhabited by Kohberger. Let's start with that. How big a deal?
It's a big deal. That is a smoking license. Just like the sheath was a smoking...
If you find the victim's ID on his or the victim's DNA on his property, absolutely, right? Like, any of their DNA on anything. I mean, I know people would still say, well, that only proves they were there. It doesn't prove he killed them, unless it's like blood or something. And then you would still have people who say, well, that only proves that they cut themselves. It doesn't prove that he cut them. You see how, like, far down that road you can always go no matter what you have? But too many coincidences stack up on top of it. To me, I start feeling like it's probably guilty. if all that's true, right? If the stuff is true, we don't know if it's true. That's why he's presumed innocent. They'll have to show us evidence at trial to convince us that he is guilty. But if they have what they say they have so far, and there's a gag order, so we're not allowed to know what they have. We're only allowed to know what they want us to know, right? So if all that's true and there's nothing, no gotcha from the other side that puts, like, I have an alibi, I was here, right? And this whole time, and that wasn't me, or somebody used my car to do DoorDash, something like that. And maybe then he's not guilty. But outside of that, there are way too many fingers pointing at him, too many consequences in a row to have to explain each one away. It's like, over the course of time, as it's leaked out in this case, right? We've had a long time in between news. So every time something new comes up, it's like, okay, is this true, or can we explain it away? And if you want to explain something away, you're always going to be able to explain it away. If you, like, little things all at once, right? But when they get to trial and they're in front of the jury, and the jury that hasn't been watching the news and hasn't been watching YouTubers and hasn't been keeping up with this case, they're not true crime junkies. They don't want to be on jury duty. They don't know who Bryan Kohberger is, and they don't care, right? Maybe they've heard his name, but they haven't, got into the case. And there's plenty of people like that to pick from. So let's not get ahead of ourselves with that. Those people are going to hear all this evidence, one after the other. All these coincidences that come into play. They're not going to have time to say, well, maybe it could have been this, maybe it could have been that. Because it's all going to tell a story as it gets put out. And if the case is put together right at the end of it, then the prosecutor will tell the story of what happened and prove everything that he can prove in between, and use every little DNA and video evidence and any kind of direct evidence that he has to fill in gaps in the circumstantial story. And at the end of that, Bryan Kohberger has to have something to give us a reason that it wasn't him, if everything else is true. Now, if they can't use some of that stuff, if some of that stuff is just rumors and didn't really happen, and mind you, the jury, they're not going to know about what so-and-so said on the internet. So they're not going to know about those rumors that come out. It's not going to be allowed at trial, right? Of course, jurors can lie. We know that. We know any human is capable of lying, right? Even a juror. But they're vetted for it, and they're not supposed to do this, right? And if they ever find out that they did, it would ruin the whole case, and it would be a mistrial, right? So normally they're pretty good about keeping the jurors in line and picking the right people, since the prosecutor and the defense attorney go through and pick the jury. So as they're hearing all the information, though, it's all going to be in a nice little neat package that's going to have an opening statement that's going to tell them what they should expect to hear, what they're going to try to prove to them. Then they're going to have all the prosecution's evidence and witnesses of whoever they call on the stand to testify, and all their experts. And they're going to talk through it, and they're going to tell the story of why it's the case, more probable than not, that Bryan Kohberger is the person who committed these crimes. And then the defense, they're going to get up and they're going to point out all the holes in the story that leave doubt, right? That, well, you say that he left his house at this time, but where did he go? Do you know where he went? Do you know for a fact he was at this place at this time? You don't. Things like that, right? Well, you say his DNA was on the sheath, but was it blood DNA? Was it DNA that he could have only put on the sheath during the act of the crime? Is it only DNA that wasn't there before that night? Can you prove it wasn't? That type of stuff. That's where the defense is going with it, right? And the jury, they're not going to buy in. They're not going to have time to buy into every single little story and find a reason for it could be different, a long shot reason why it could be different. And they're going to have the other jury members, all of them with their own mind working, and discussing and questioning each other and convincing each other that, yeah, he's either this or he's that. If all the things are true, if they tell everything at court that we've heard so far, he would be guilty in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. Do I know for a fact that he did it? No. No, because I don't have direct evidence of him doing it, and I haven't seen what they have for circumstantial evidence and what is right and wrong. But if I had to bet my life, if my life was up for grabs, right, there's a much better chance that he's guilty than not guilty, in my opinion. But only 47% of you guys think he's guilty. So I would love for people to tell me why he's not. Let's see, let's read some of chat. Richard says, I think he is guilty because why would anybody want to set him up, and who? Nancy says she don't trust News Nation. Kat said, I'm more inclined to think it's Dylan Mortensen because they never specifically said victims officially. There's a lot of reasons to suggest it's Dylan Mortensen, in my opinion. I agree. I feel that way. For sure. I don't know that it was hers. I'm not trying to report that it was hers. I don't report things. I just give my opinion on stuff anyway. People seem to think I'm a journalist or something. I'm just somebody sitting in the extra bedroom talking to the microphone and the camera, right? Oh, I'm needing to scroll. Oh, I didn't realize I was that far up. I'm sorry. I certainly don't envy the jury that has to sit in the trial and see all of that horrific and sad evidence. I agree with you. I don't envy any jury ever that has to make the decision on somebody's life, right? Like, that's not a position you want to be in, except for very specific circumstances would you want to be in that position. Rob says Dad's the middleman. The wandering orphan says yes at Miss Nancy. Okay. Oh, that drive back home with his daddy was kind of odd, so maybe, I don't know if his dad would be involved. I think his dad was just being dad, right? I think his son said he didn't want to drive back all the way by himself. So, and if Bryan did do it, and he's wanting to get the hell away and get the car the hell away, so he definitely doesn't want to take a plane. So he asked his dad, hey, will you fly out here and ride back with me? And the dad was probably thinking, yeah, I'll get to spend some time with my son, right? My son that's been away at college that I haven't seen. He's 28. Like, I'll get to spend time with him. So roll out. Of course. I don't see the dad being... the dad didn't seem like there was anything off about him. When they got pulled over, he was talking too much. He was upsetting Bryan, you could tell. Giving out information Bryan didn't seem to be happy about him giving out. I want to know what the note to his dad said, and I want someone to explore number 34 and page 118. I have screenshots. What do you mean by that? Page 118 of what? Elliot Rodgers' manifesto? Because, I mean, we don't know what book it was, but what was number 34? Oh, look. You talking about on the David? What does it say? A man something drawing? Is that what it says? Let me scroll down so I can actually see what people are responding. Because I went way too far. Alright. The drawing. Yeah, what does that say, though? A man's what drawing? That's the worst handwriting of anybody. This guy, I mean, I got rough handwriting. I used to be a car salesman, but I can't read nothing this person writes. I don't know. That looks like it's one word. Amari something drawing? Is that what it's saying? What does that say? A man's mind drawing. Okay. Got you. Appreciate that. I could not read that at all. But, I'm sorry. I got completely sidetracked, didn't I? Let's get back to seeing if he ever said it was a victim's ID or one of the residents' ID, or if they just said it was connected to the residents.
She found next to Maddie with his DNA on that clasp. It's the same thing in this situation. Why would he have an ID related to one of those people from that house? And remember, we know that identifications were recovered from the glove box, and that was at the Pennsylvania search warrant. So interesting. We always wondered, what were those identifications that they referred to?
What's the counter, Mark?
Well, look, the counter is we don't know if it's true yet. I think part of the problem is when you put a gag order on stuff like this, and you don't have a way for people to respond, you get us doing what we're doing now. I mean, I would much rather find out if, in fact...
Exactly. Like that point right there, when they put the gag order out, when they gag this case and they won't let information come out, they really only handicap Bryan Kohberger, and they only fueled the narrative for speculation and conspiracy, right? Why gag the case so much? Because you don't want your jury pool affected? Is that the reason? If so, just say that. Don't say I don't want it to harm the investigation. We don't want to, affect the jury pool. That's an understandable consideration, right? But you're not going to get to keep it in your little town anyway. It's going to have to move to a different court. There's no chance that the people in the little town that ain't had a murder in 7 years don't know too much about this case. There's plenty of people in Idaho that don't know enough about the case. But in Moscow and Pullman, everybody's going to know about this. Everybody. So the gag order, it's the government is letting out whatever information they want to let out, right? The things they deemed appropriate to go ahead and say, they're saying. But Bryan Kohberger's side, they can't say anything. The families shouldn't really say anything. The witnesses can't say anything. The investigators, the detectives, they're not supposed to say anything. All that, the judges, the lawyers, anybody associated with the case is not supposed to be saying anything. But the government, Big Brother, the one who is prosecuting, technically, they're allowed to leak out parts of their side that make their side more compelling, which is why I feel right now that you're in denial if you don't believe that the things that we've heard so far make him seem guilty. That doesn't mean that he is guilty, but all the things that we've heard so far sure make him seem guilty. And if those things are true, you gotta admit he's probably guilty, right? Not that he is, just that we're teeter-totter. And if they prove everything they've said, then you don't have to prove yourself innocent. That's important to remember, right? But you have to expect something to counter it, right? Like once they've got you nailed down dead to rights, you got to give some reason why, some alternate explanation for that, right? Not really, but you do. You do if you want to convince somebody. What was this? Did Edith remove her own comment, or did somebody remove it? What was that? I didn't see it. Oh. Him and BK were friends too. Okay, so who are y'all talking about now? The oh my god, what's his name? Bryan Kohberger. Yeah, please hit the like button. 106 people? That's awesome. That is great. Hit the like button for me. Help me out. Oh. I mean, I wouldn't rule out Bryan Kohberger being involved. I mean, outside of, like, it would fit, right? Because of what happened, because the dad, like, knew all about it, which made you feel like maybe Bryan did know him. Somebody said they worked together before. Is that true? And okay, so Truth and Transparency channel, right? I was on my way to work the other morning, and I clicked on her video that had just came out then. I don't know how old it is now. I don't know how long, like, it was a couple days ago. But it was playing about the DoorDash delivery driver, what the GPS, where it would take you, and the report from the police about how they were circling back and forth, how the car that they were looking for had went down, came back, went down, came back, and she was making the point kind of that if you're delivering DoorDash, you might not be familiar with the neighborhood, you might miss your turn a time or two, so that could have been the DoorDash car and not Bryan Kohberger's. I believe that's what she was trying to say there. It was early in the morning, but that makes sense, you know. What kind of car did the DoorDash person drive? Did they also drive an Elantra? I mean, I doubt it. Highly doubt it. But she had like a little silver Elantra there, so maybe. I mean, that would be crazy, right? DoorDash is the meth delivery truck. Damn. They didn't look like they did meth. I guess you insinuating that they might have sold it or something? I think it's just courtesy on Pennsylvania's part until it's ordered in that state. That's why they have released some information. Yeah, but have they released anything that doesn't make Bryan Kohberger look guilty? Or that gives him any reason to have benefit of the doubt? Edith says she hopes they can crack Dylan. She knows what happened and why. I feel like there's something to that. I really feel like there's something to that. Yeah, Rob, it's a known drug area, which, I mean, it's a college campus. Every one of them is a known drug area, if we're being honest here. So that's no surprise to me. And this was a party house. So to me, I feel like it's insane when people try to act like, oh, well, it's unthinkable that these 20, 21-year-old girls and one guy who were sorority girls and fraternity guy, and they go party and they go out to bars and they have fun and they do house parties and they do frat parties, and their house is a known party house where they party and the cops get called out there multiple times. How is it so difficult to think that maybe they were involved in drugs, right? Not saying they were. Not saying they were kingpin drug dealers and it took 8 hours to clean drugs out of the house. But, I mean, you know, maybe they smoked some weed. Maybe they took Adderall or Vyvanse or whatever that they take in college now. Like, maybe they were doing party drugs. Maybe. Maybe they were caught up in that. Maybe it was pills and heroin and stuff. Maybe. But do you think that it was like a cartel hit or something? I don't think that they were that deep into it, even though it's very possible that that's not as far-fetched as everybody likes to make believe, for sure. But think it was just a deal gone bad? You think it was just somebody was threatened? Do you think the rumor about how Dylan's boyfriend is a drug dealer and that maybe he or Maddie and Dylan got into it and he wanted Maddie gone or something? Do you think, is that where you're at with it? Like, I think about all this stuff just because I don't like just because I don't buy into everything, I completely try to think through the stuff. Like, I think of my mind is conspiracy oriented. So I go to every single avenue that I can think of. And it could be this, it could be that. But I always have to, is it likely? I mean, because anything's possible. We live in a crazy ass world, right? There's a woman, Lori Vallow, whatever, that we talked about the last live stream, who's in court right now because she killed her own kids because they were zombies. Right? There are some wild people in this world, and we don't know Bryan Kohberger. We don't know, unless you know him personally, we don't know what kind of person he is or what he's capable of. Nobody thinks people are capable of doing something like that until they do it. Right? Like Chris Benoit, right? That wrestler from back in the day. He was famous, rich, and went crazy due to brain damage and took out his whole family. Nobody seems like they would do it until they do it. And the people who do seem like they would do it probably would never do it. It's crazy. You know for a fact Maddie owed drug money. How do you know that for a fact, Wandering Orphan? We said that Kim Banning, take some calls. I'll take some calls here in just a minute. Mena, Arkansas. Oh, I know all about Mena, Arkansas, Bubba. What are we talking about Mena, Arkansas for, though? You have audio that she owed drug money? To who? Like the neighbors? Is that what you're saying? She owed drug money to the neighbors? Or the neighbors have audio that she owed drug money? Yeah, I mean, someone would have to owe tens of thousands of dollars for this type of hit. I mean, if you just owed the money, yeah. Or if it was like personal, you know, not if you screwed somebody over, I guess. But yeah, I wouldn't put it past somebody doing it for free, right? That's what we're accusing Kohberger of when we say that he's the suspect in this case. You're saying he did it. It wasn't necessarily, money hasn't been a motive for him. So people are crazy. There's some wild people who will go murder a stranger in public just to join a gang. You know, like some people's minds are just warped. Hey, Jewels of all trades. I am really wanting to know about this audio, though. Where'd Wandering Orphan go? Encyclopedia of True Crime and the Unknown. His motive is psychological and emotional. Yeah, if he did it, yeah, I agree. I mean, that's what the story that they're painting, that's what it tells me, right? Susu says Dylan Mortensen's boyfriend could have been. Yeah. I mean, the whole theory that I had posted that somebody had sent me was saying that Dylan Mortensen's boyfriend lived in Boise or something, and they sold drugs out of the house, and Bryan Kohberger was the connect for Washington State, where he would come pick it up from them and distribute it over in Washington State. Now, I get that sounds like a far-fetched movie. One of these days I'm going to tell y'all why that's really not that unbelievable at all. But, not today. But it's really not that unbelievable that somebody could have a connection and then these college kids are moving it around campus. Really not. Especially at that age. That's when you do stupid stuff like that, right? Now, I'm not saying they did do it because I'm not trying to bash their reputations as people without having the evidence of it, but common sense would tell you they go out, they party, they have fun. They're in college, right? So they're experimenting with different things and finding out who they are. No question that they probably, you know, one or more of them have dabbled in some dark art. Not dark art for real. Don't get me twisted here. But that they could, you know, Theo Von dark arts. Oh. Validation boy, what's up? Moscow Police Department trying to get their dirty cut. Kaylee shows up in a Land Rover. Hey, I mean, is there any evidence for that? Because I'm all ears. Is there a police officer that we believe, or that you guys believe, I guess? Is there a police officer that we could believe, let me say it that way, would have been involved with them and felt like he got shafted or asked for a cut and didn't get a cut? Because I feel like if the cop comes and says, I want a cut, and you're doing that, you give that cop the cut. Crisis Cast. I'm really wanting to know if anyone has seen any evidence that anyone was murdered. Well, bud, for me, the parents, right? I know it, sure, could be a huge false flag, but I don't think it is. I really don't. People knew them, you know. Kylie Rodney was a strange case where there was a small little group of people who even said that they knew who she was, right? There's no social media that ever came out about her. There's no people speaking out about how they went to kindergarten with her or they were their friend that the other friends didn't really like or nothing. It was just that one group of people that were all around for her death. It was a whole strange circumstance where Kylie Rodney really fit that type of narrative that somebody could push, right? And I'm not saying she was none of that shit, right? I'm not trying to go there. I'm just saying, like, that's the type of scenario that a case can kick off for that and make you stop and think, like, is this bull? Like, is this real or is this fake? But this case, like, these girls had they were parts of their communities. They were known. We have police video that they were here and loud noises, and there's no big connection in their family that we would know about to have them need to fake their own deaths or nothing, or, you know. So how is this a false flag? How? Like, what would give you the idea that this is? Just because you, if I'm remembering correctly, it's because you said that you'd never seen the bodies leave the house, right? But we didn't have 24/7 video coverage of it, and a lot of people are kind of slimy where they would want to video the bodies coming out of the house and make sure they have it. But some people are more respectful and would, like, yeah, we're not going to video this part, right? Like, there's still common decency where people might do that. Maybe. That's just my opinion. But the real audio is True Crime Cafe with Dago. If they didn't yank it. So that's the audio that you were talking about earlier where Maddie's saying that she owes drug money? I forget there's a delay here sometimes. I'm sorry. Yeah. I mean, I understand why people go down that road with Kylie. I don't understand it with Kaylee and Maddie and Ethan and Xana. Right? I don't understand why that would even make sense to do, or what the benefit. I mean, I know false flags are false, but, like, they have some purpose, right? They're an exercise when they run them. So what would the purpose of that be? And I feel like if it was, they wouldn't. I don't know. I don't feel like it would be so much coverage around it. Like, I feel like that would stop. You have the media and the government, right? And those big media, ABC, NBC, CBS, all those guys are related or married or best friends with people in high-ranking offices in the government. So if the government didn't want the media to talk about something or push a narrative, they would cut that out, you know? I don't feel like the media would push the narrative of this case as hard as they have if it was a false flag. That's where I'm at with that. But what was that? Let me see. What did you say that audio was at? I mean, that's completely sidetracked me, Crisis Cast, because I just can't see it. So you're saying you have seen absolutely zero evidence in just going over the narrative. Zero evidence of what? That they got murdered? I mean, I haven't seen evidence that a lot of people got murdered, but I believe that when that's, common knowledge. When people were here and then they're gone, I kind of believe that, unless I have a reason to believe otherwise, I don't need it to be, oh, well, you didn't prove it to me, so I can't take your word for the fact that they got murdered in the first place. Like, I know people lie for no reason, but I feel like your trust is really broken. But no judgment, dude. Whatever, Believe that. I just feel like that's a big waste of time. Because I would rather find out who did this. And my main interest in the whole thing is to find out, not figure out. I'm not going to be the one to figure it out. Don't get me wrong there. But to find out, to learn what happened here and why. Because it's horrific. That's an insane thought to have. You're asleep in your bed, and a stranger, for all we know, comes in your house in the middle of the night, early morning hours, like an hour after you fell asleep, drunk, and you wake up and they're stabbing you and your friends, right? But then imagine hearing all that take place, looking out the door, screaming, apparently, shut the F up, and then still hearing it, looking out the door again, screaming it again, still hearing it, and then open up the door and see a man dressed all in black, possibly still carrying a knife that he didn't have a sheath for anymore, walking out of the house. Now, for everybody who says it was so dark, she probably didn't notice blood. She didn't notice a knife, a shiny knife that would reflect any little bit of light that would pop out. She wouldn't see none of that. She wouldn't smell none of that. She wouldn't have heard the struggles and stuff. Just the, bumps and little noises here and there. Somebody saying, I'm here to help. But she could see his eyebrows. She could see the shape of his body. If you can see his eyebrows, you can see him. Right? Am I wrong there? Like, if I turned out all these lights, and trust me, there's a lot of them here. Y'all have no idea. If I turned out all these lights, though, would you be able to see my eyebrows and how they are better than you could see if I was holding a big object, like a 10-inch object in my hand? Or if I was breathing heavily because I just did a speed run on 4 homicides with a knife, or covered in blood from the 4. Would you see any of that? Do you imagine they would? So then we're left to believe that that girl then shuts that door after seeing that and goes back into the room and is in shock for 8.5 hours because she never came out to witness or check on or see none of the stuff. That's what I don't want to be distracted from, right? Maybe Bryan Kohberger's the guy, but what's going on with Dylan? Can we get answers to those questions? Was it her ID? If it was, how many excuses do we make? I mean, because I'm against the excuses for Kohberger, right? Like, I'm all for reasonable doubt. I'm all for reasonable doubt. Is it reasonable to doubt this? Is it reasonable to doubt this, right? It's like, if you told me that you just went to the store and bought a Red Bull, and you're standing there drinking a Red Bull, and I just saw you pull in the driveway, I might not have seen you go to the store and buy that Red Bull. But if you tell me that, I'll probably believe you, right? Because you're holding a Red Bull and you just pulled back up. So I'd probably believe that you just went to the store and bought it. I would have no reason to doubt that. Right? Oh, wait. Completely forgot what I was talking about with that. Where I was going with the whole, I would have no reason to doubt it. Oh yeah, the reasonable doubt stuff. So I understand there's reasonable doubt to some of the stuff that came out because it came out slow. It came out one piece at a time. It came out, a week or two in between each little scenario where we had plenty of time to go over it and talk about it and make up, possibilities that it could be something different and convince each other of that. But when you really lay it out, let's just think about it, right? Let me put myself back. I don't know why I've been little so long. All right. So when you imagine that somebody came in that house that night, we're going to start from the jump. They came in that house that night. They murdered 2 people and then went upstairs or downstairs and murdered 2 more people. Now, with that taking place, that person did that in between 9 to 12 minutes, which is plenty of time that you could do it. But it's not just, it's going to be strenuous, right? Like 2 girls asleep in the same bed, you could probably get that pretty quick and be going downstairs. But then you have 2 adults that are awake and actively resisting, and you are struggling with both of them possibly at the same time. Maybe not, maybe one at a time, but with the threat of both at the same time at the least. And you've got another person who's on the same floor of the house. Listen, I can hear outside this door that's got a sound blanket across it. I can hear my fiance rattling some papers, right? So this person's on the same floor of the house, and she doesn't hear a battle. 2 people fighting for their life. She doesn't hear that. But she does hear, "I'm here to help," by some male's voice. I don't know who. Somebody saying there's somebody here. She heard bumping. That sounds like Kaylee playing with a dog. And she opened the door multiple times to holler at him. We're not going to keep going through that. But then she saw him, as I just described. Described him as having bushy eyebrows and his certain height and build, right? Didn't see the knife and all that. That we know of. Even though that would have been pretty key to putting a probable cause arrest warrant, right? But she didn't see the weapon, none of that. She didn't know anything had happened, apparently. She just thought, hey, that's somebody that was just in here making noise with them, and now they're leaving. And she goes in the bedroom and goes to bed. Or maybe she's in frozen shock phase. Maybe. Who knows? Who knows? Is she in frozen shock phase? Is she? Or did she go to sleep? Because 8.5 hours is a perfect amount of time to say I went to sleep and slept 8 hours, right? Woke up, took me like 30 minutes to decide to get out of bed because I didn't have nothing to do. And then somebody came in the house, not her. She didn't go and call somebody to come over there for that reason, supposedly. But somebody came over. Maybe she called them and told them to come. Maybe not. But they discovered the bodies. And then they screamed for her to call 911. And then the 911 call, remember, this is kind of forgotten these days. It doesn't get brought up near as much as it used to. They still haven't released the 911 call. We don't know who called, how that call took place, what was said on that call. We know what was reported, that they were called for an unconscious person. But we don't know any other details about that. And there's absolutely zero reasons how that could hurt for the 911 call to be released. But I mean, I guess it's covered under the gag order too, right? Everybody. So, we don't know who did it. We don't know who committed this crime. We're all thinking, the true crime community, we're trying to figure it out. The family of Kaylee, they're out looking, finding Ring camera doorbells that have certain video on it, and the food truck video from Twitch that had Kaylee and Maddie on there with Jack Showalter hanging around, and then them ditching Jack Showalter, and Maddie saying "F you, mister" to Jack Showalter, and then Showalter apparently left that night. When they left, that right after they ditched him, and he went out of state. So a lot of us got caught up thinking, hey, this guy probably had something to do with it. Because, 9 times out of 10, if a guy's with these girls all night, as we saw that he was, and then they ditch him at the end of the night to go home, and he seems upset about it. He doesn't seem happy. And then he's 5 hours away the next morning when they're found murdered. He's going to be a suspect, right? So we go that way, and then people, including myself, started thinking, well, hey, Kaylee's ex-boyfriend, they had a 6-year relationship, they just broke up, the dog didn't really cause much of a fuss, apparently, so maybe he had something to do with it, and even Kaylee's family questioned him and wanted to see if he had scratches and marks on him, so it wasn't really out of bounds to ask that. I mean, people do crazy things, like I said. I mean, look at the Letitia Staunch trial. She murdered her stepson and then made up 30 different stories to tell her husband about where he went and what happened. People do terrible stuff, right? So, oh my God. But I'm lost. I lost where I was at just now. Completely. I started thinking about Letitia Staunch and that tragedy of a situation for that little boy. But we thought that the boyfriend did it, right? We thought he had something to do with it. Turns out he didn't. Jake, Maddie's boyfriend, he never really got that much of a blame game. Some people would bring him up, some people would ask questions about him, but he never got blamed like everybody else, right? Like all the other boyfriends and friends and stuff in the story. Jake didn't catch it. Like Jack. And then we get the picture that comes out that's a still from a video at the corner club, which is where they were at that night, that Jack DeCore was actually there. And that he was at the club at a certain time, and there was a guy standing there, looked like a cop, looked like it could have been Chief Fry. We got to remember that all happened, right? And then there was all this, well, what about Jack Showalter? He ran off to Africa. Was that ever substantiated or debunked? Did he go to Africa? Was it a pre-planned mission trip? Did he just randomly decide to go with his parents? Was there any reality to that at all? Because, I mean, once Bryan Kohberger got arrested, everybody just kind of, oh, well, that wasn't the case, right? Just washed it away. But we have all that going. And then they end up arresting Bryan Kohberger. And when they arrested Bryan Kohberger, the news broke And there were people reporting to other people. I shared the article, the link for it, of the name and stuff that was first released, and it was a completely different name than Bryan Kohberger. They had got the wrong person or whatever in the reporting, not in the arrest. But then Bryan Kohberger, and then his pictures came out, and it was him with the little vest on, like the, you know, the, I don't want to say the word because it causes problems, but the S word vest, right? And taking pictures of him, and he looked wild and crazy because he was arrested at this time in the morning. And you think, well, he just woke up and got out of bed, right? That's why he looked all wild and crazy-eyed like that, because he had just woke up out of bed to get arrested. But no, he was awake. He was awake, even sorting trash, according to people. They say that he was digging through the trash, and he was taking out anything that might have had his DNA on it, putting it into individual baggies and into other people's trash. Right? But at that night, when they arrested him, he was in the middle of pulling the trash out of the trash can and putting it in those individual baggies. And the cope that comes with that, because we don't know that that's a true story. That's just what was told to us, right? We were just told that. But the people say he could have been separating his recycling. His recycling really breaks down by his DNA, right? If it's got his DNA on it, it gets recycled. He's that hardcore of a vegan, right? That's insane to me. That is going overboard with that idea. That makes no sense whatsoever. And I mean, I'm open though. I'm open to being convinced if you have a clear and convincing argument to explain to me why. Why at 4 a.m. would you be doing that? Why would it be taking things out that had your DNA on it, putting it into individual baggies? How is that separating trash or recycling? How do you conjecture that? And then we haven't talked about the knife sheath yet, right? Because I wanted to specifically wait until after I said Bryan Kohberger was arrested, because there's a lot of people who remember it as Bryan Kohberger got arrested, and then we found out about the knife sheath. And there's a lot of people who remember it where we found out about the knife sheath before Bryan Kohberger was arrested. What do you guys think? Do you think we knew about the knife sheath, verified that they had found a knife sheath, not just Reddit rumors, but did we know that they had found a knife sheath before or after Kohberger's arrest? RVing, keeping it rolling. This is exactly what I'm talking about. He says, we don't know that story is true, but if it was, it's the law in Pennsylvania to separate your trash. Just because he's strange doesn't make him a killer. I used to clean all night. Now, first, let me say, just because he's strange doesn't make him a killer? Absolutely. I mean, I'm pretty damn strange myself, and I'm not a killer, But okay. Separating your trash doesn't mean taking out individual items that would have your DNA on it, like was told to us, and putting them in separate baggies. Now, that's what was told to us that he was doing, right? But not only that, but we were also told, we don't know it's a fact, right? I give you that part. We don't know if it's a fact or not. It could be bull. That's why I say we have to wait for trial before we know. But if all the stuff is true. Now, we were told that they couldn't find his DNA in the trash. And that's why they used his father's DNA to match it as this person is the son of Bryan Kohberger's father. Right? They could do that. But they couldn't get Bryan Kohberger's DNA off, even though Bryan Kohberger was there in the house. They said he was putting his trash in neighbors' cans. So, if they kick in the door to arrest you and you're in there and they've been looking for your DNA in the trash the whole time and couldn't find any, and then you're in there picking out trash that would have your DNA on it and putting it into individual baggies, prepping it to get ready to throw in other cans, I feel like it's pretty safe to say that if what they said is true, then that's what he was doing. And we don't need the cope of he was separating trash, he was separating recycling, it's the law, you have to do this or that. That's ridiculous cope, because he might not have been doing it. The story could be false. But if he was doing what they said, which was separating trash that had his DNA on it and putting it into individual baggies while wearing rubber gloves, which you're separating trash, I'd hope you wear rubber gloves, right? But while he's doing that, we have to listen to what they were saying to us and say either we believe it or we don't. We can't make excuses for insane behavior and just wave it away, right? You can if it was only that, right? If it was only that. But it's also a neat little coincidence that he had the same exact car that at the time that the car that committed the crimes, the car that they were looking for, the car that was on video, the car of the person who they believed had information about the crime, so let's not say committed the crime, but that car that they were looking for that had no front tag on it, but Idaho and Washington both require front tags, and Pennsylvania doesn't, and he was currently at that time running Pennsylvania tags, so he wouldn't have had a front tag on his car, so that would match. And then they found a knife sheath beside one of the victims that they were able to pull off DNA that matched to Bryan Kohberger, the son of Bryan Kohberger's father. That's a coincidence. The fact that he left his house and went in that general direction before his phone turned off and was no longer sending a signal, that's a nice little coincidence. The fact that after everything had taken place and he had enough time to leave the residence and get to this other place, his phone came back on. And then the coincidence that he came back to that area later that day with his GPS on his phone at like 9 o'clock and then went back home. And then he was wearing rubber gloves everywhere he went, right? Could have been a COVID scare, right? There's possibilities. But once you have all these different connections, right? Once you have all these coincidences stack up on top of each other time and time and time and time again, why even, like, at this point, in my mind, right? Maybe I can be convinced otherwise if you have a good enough argument. But at this point in my mind, how is he not involved, right? Like, you could convince me that he had help. You can convince me maybe Dylan helped. You could convince me that maybe Dylan's boyfriend had something to do with it. You could convince me that Brent Kopaka might have had something to do with it. You could convince me that he did it by himself. You could convince me of a lot of things right now. But the fact that he had nothing to do with this, with all of that being true, including the Instagram stuff, where not only did he follow all the victims, but he liked every post on a particular one's page. He ripped pictures of those off of Instagram. Now, on Instagram, you can't just click it and save it. You have to literally screenshot it and crop it and edit it out to save a picture from Instagram, right? So he had ripped pictures from Instagram on his phone. Why would you do that? Because they're on Instagram, right? They're there. Why would you save them to your phone? Just go to Instagram and look at them there. But not only that, but apparently he had repeatedly messaged one of them without any response. Then he had a book in his car, an untitled book. So maybe it wasn't really a book. Maybe it was just a notebook filled with a book, right? for layman's terms, a book. Maybe it's not a published book, but maybe it's a book. Maybe it's Elliot Rodgers Manifesto, 137 to 140 page document. But page 118 was highlighted in that book. And if you go to Elliot Rodgers Manifesto, page 118 describes so perfectly the exact same scenario that played out. All the way down to Elliot Rodgers wanted to commit that in November of 2013. And this happened November the 13th. So it's all kinds of coincidences. It makes it real hard to be like, nah, nope, I don't believe it. You either have to believe he's being framed, that for some reason that somebody else did it and they're covering for that person and throwing this guy to the wolves for whatever reason, then I'd like to hear that theory and why they're doing that. I would like to hear it. Maybe you could convince me of it, right? Or you have to think that he did it, right? He's involved in it somehow. He's part of it somehow. Or a lot of extremely bad coincidences just ruined his life. Mark Pash. See, this is another cope. This is some stupid shit right here. I'm sorry, but it is. Elliot Rodgers wrote a manifesto. It was 137 pages long. You can Google it right now. Click a link, go to it. It's got a print button that you could print out. You could punch it, bind it, whatever you want, and make it into a book. It was never published by a publisher's company, so it's not a published book. But if I hand you a script that I write that's 137 pages long, you're going to be like, damn, you wrote a book. So quit with the stupid. There was no title for this book. There was the cop didn't write Goosebumps book. He didn't write Twilight book. He wrote a book. Why just a book? Maybe because it wasn't really a book. It was just a book. Maybe. But that's so stupid to me. I'm not saying you're stupid, just that thought process is stupid. In my mind. To me. I can't comprehend that. Because I'm not sitting here saying it was Elliot Rodgers Manifesto. I'm saying it sure seems like it could be Elliot Rodgers Manifesto because those pages line up perfectly and the lack of detail of what the cop wrote leaves it open to it being that. Right? And then you got to come in with, well, he never even printed he never published a book. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. The Wandering Orphan. Okay, buddy, I gotta go. I was hoping chat would be involved. I would have joined up for a membership. Maybe next time I'll super chat you. Still love ya. See you on the replay. I'll see you next time, bud. Hell, email me and I can set up so we can just talk one-on-one and live streaming if you want to. I'm open for any of that. Like, I'm not too good for none of that shit. Oh. But yeah. Not trying to be rude about that. Just, I can't process that. I can't make that make sense to me. It just doesn't make sense to me. Oh. Who is they, harlot? Who is the they that wouldn't refer to his manifesto as a book? And who's to say it wasn't bound? You don't have to be published to have a book that's bound. If you want to go through the trouble, you can bind the book yourself. It's just glue. Like, that's my whole thing. Kim Banning. That's not true about trash. What part's not true? I'm open to hear it, because I don't know if the trash stuff is true or not. That's just what was said that a cop there said. I didn't see it anywhere official. But just going over what's been said there with that. Crisis Cast ain't a troll, though. Crisis Cast is always in here. He just believes differently, but I don't believe he's a troll. Where you say the trolls are the people making up stuff and convicting a man with no evidence that he committed a crime or that a crime even took place. Yeah, I mean that's how he sees it, right? He doesn't believe that it even happened. And if he believes that, then good for him. You'll never convince me of that because there's no reason to. If you showed me proof of it, I would change my mind, right? That should be everybody on everything always, right? No matter how strongly I feel about something, no matter how much I believe I know something, if you show me that I'm wrong, I'll listen. But if you can't show me that I'm wrong, and I can't show you that you're wrong, then we just have to agree to disagree there. Who would want to frame BK? I don't know who would want to frame BK. And I'm not upset in any way toward anybody. I hope that don't come across that way. I just talk excitedly sometimes. But yeah, I don't know who would want to frame BK. I don't know why everybody has such a hard-on for Payne. What Officer Payne, what did he do? Like, that has everybody suspecting him of stuff. Because I feel like I followed this case pretty closely. Now, I didn't go down every rabbit hole where when there seems like there's nothing going on, I can't go down those rabbit holes. But yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and open up StreamYard, post a link, and see if anybody can convince me that I'm wrong somewhere. Or just tell me about something. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Seema. Thank you for coming by, though. Alright, let's see if we can make this happen. I know I'll have to mute one mic and turn off one camera or something to do this, so let's see. I wish I could call Dylan. I would love to speak to her and get questions answered. Let's see, maybe that'll work. Now let me get the link and pop in chat. There we go. Nancy Ann. Yeah, I would love to talk to Dylan. Mortensen. I mean, I would just like to know, what is the story, that she was asleep or that she was in shock? Like, that would be great to know. Almost choked. Oh. But if anybody wants to come up, click the link. You don't have to have your camera on or nothing. You can just show me that you're who you are. And we can put it through. But yeah. Well, it is a gag order, right? Oh, wait. Nope. I haven't seen anything about her. See, what I think is interesting is we haven't heard a word about Bethany Funk. Like, nothing. Like, they released their statements through their pastor or whatever, and then there's been nothing. But Bethany just completely gets left out. I see a lot of people say that she wasn't even at the house when it happened, and that's some story that's part of some cover-up or something. I don't know. Bo will walk on the timeline and the off-the-wall story, Dylan stated. Bo? I don't think they would be in witness protection. Unless something is, like, going on, you know? Like, there's a lot more to this that we don't know about, like cartel or something is involved, then I don't see why they would be. They just ain't speaking on this, and surprisingly the media either doesn't know where they are or is not chasing them around asking them questions because the gag order won't let them answer anyway. Word is Funk turned on Dylan for drugs. I'm guessing you mean BK? Oopa Loopa? Say he didn't do it? Well, what makes you say he didn't do it? Like, why do you believe he didn't? Whatever happened to Validation Boy? He was in here a while ago. He can get up here and play devil's advocate. He believes a lot of the stuff that I don't believe. It's there. I promise if you come up, whoever, I'm not going to be hateful. I'm going to be super respectful, and I'm going to try to word things in a way that doesn't come off like I'm being a butthead or something. Because a lot of the times I just start talking, I get excited when I talk, and people confuse that. They think that I'm getting worked up and getting mad, which, I mean, I have worked myself up, but most of the time I'm just talking. I'm just excited. I get to going fast. I want to talk faster and faster and faster. I want to be like Ben Shapiro one day. Oh, wait. Oh. There's my tinfoil hat. But when it comes down to it, really, I want to know what happened. I don't want to be right. I don't want somebody else to be wrong. I don't know Bryan, so I don't just want him to be guilty. And hopefully he didn't do it. But if he didn't, who did? Who did? Somebody did. And that person is out. Right? That person is walking the street. If Bryan Kohberger didn't do it, then there's somebody who did some crazy stuff like this for no reason. It's just aluminum foil. I couldn't sell it. It would never make it in shipping. Well, it's a beanie inside aluminum foil. There he is. I thought you'd done RUNDOFT. Are you there? Or can you hear me?
I'm here.
What's up, bud?
Hey, what's going on?
So what do you disagree with me about today?
I mean, not much, but I just think that there's a lot of things that have come out and they've just been from sources.
Oh yeah,
You know?
yeah, I
And
agree
then
there.
once those sources create this big circumstantial mountain of
Definitely.
really unprovable evidence, it sets the tone, and then they drop the next little thing on you. Since you're already thinking in that pattern, it all starts to make sense.
Well, what
None
part
these
of
things
it's
have really-
unprovable?
a lot of the things that have come out in this case have never really paid off, or they've been red herrings.
Well, we don't
They've
know
been
though.
Slow drift onto us.
We haven't.
And I feel like there's some kind of bigger social engineering, psychological agenda at play here. This is more about shaping the way that our society behaves.
So you
towards
think this
certain
is just a
demographics,
red
or
flag?
the way that our society picks up new beliefs or confirms old beliefs about certain demographics in our society, and it has a lot to do with social interplay and a way to maybe divide and conquer society, or maybe a way to hurt society or hurt certain elements within our society in ways that can last generations.
So
I think that this case is a little bit of psychological warfare against the American people.
by who?
Just the powers that be, the unseen gynocracy that I believe exists.
But do you think this was a false flag?
I feel like this case has an agenda there's a lot of male-female elements at play here.
Oh, I think so. Yeah. Can you hear me?
And I feel like this whole Elliot Rodger thing got interjected into this whole story really with no real connection, just speculated by some anonymous source, and then everyone started just making all these connections.
All right, hold on one second. I've got to figure out how to get rid of this echo when I talk. If I do this.
Are all the other windows?
Yeah, every time I start to talk, I hear myself talk right back, like the echo.
Yeah, it sounds like you're in a phaser.
That's annoying. I'm no idea how to fix it. Let me see. Jerry, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Alright. Let me try to figure out my echo thing real quick. I'm sorry. It's just driving me nuts. I can't listen to that.
Maybe it's because OBS needs to have the volume turned all the way down, but you keep the StreamYard volume all the way up, or vice versa. Like one or the other. Because I feel like they're phasing in and out of each other. There's something phasing. And I know you're on like a 2-stage thing there.
Okay, how's that? Awesome. I still heard it. That's good. Can chat still hear me? And can you hear validation? Well, you can, because I saw you saying that. Okay, great. Now, so were you trying to say earlier that you think it was a false flag? Or that the media were just trying to push a certain narrative based on it? All right. Oh, so now they can't hear you. Yeah, that's... And you can't hear me now, right? Validation. The chat can hear me, but you can't. How about... No, that wouldn't work because it's delayed through chat. Let me exit this and then join back in just a second. Let me see if I can get that fixed. Let me exit this out and then I'll post the link again and you can rejoin, see if we can get this fixed. All right. That is, wow. Like, I don't know what it sounds like to you guys, but when I'm talking, I'm hearing myself while I'm talking and then after I'm done talking, and my brain just can't compute. Yeah, maybe they do. If they have YouTube. I feel like Validation Boy would know that, though. And it was doing it when it was just me and him. Oh. Let's pull this up. Try this again. So I don't get it. The last time I had somebody up, it worked fine, and I haven't changed this, so that is interesting. Oh. Let's see. Now, if I unmute myself here. So were you trying to say earlier that you think it was... See, what is that? Flag? That is Jerry's. Yes, Jerry. Or that the media were just trying... Boom. Okay, so that's coming from Jerry's. Not from mine. So if I add that. And that. Jerry, do you have YouTube on?
Yeah.
Alright. Mute the YouTube and just through StreamYard. Because that's what's coming back through. At least for this time. Now, Validation Boy, where are you at? Let's do this. How you doing, Jerry?
I'm doing well. Yourself?
Pretty good. Pretty good. What'd you have on your mind?
Well, I mean, I can't get over the whole timeline that they've laid out. I mean, between the DoorDash driver, Dylan's story, and the time they said that BK has done all this, I mean, just roughly the way I figure it, it gives him anywhere from 9 to 12 minutes to get in, out, in the car, and gone.
Right.
I mean, he would have had to either had some type of help with this. And what really bothers me is the whole Dylan story. It just doesn't add up. I mean, you're going to wait almost till noon after seeing all this all night long going on, and then hiding out in your room, and I just keep thinking that maybe she could have possibly been involved, maybe even as the driver.
Yeah, I understand. I understand that completely. Now, I think that there is enough time there, but it has to go through it has to go in a certain order and a certain scenario, really, for that to be enough time, right? Because if you cut this in half and you say, is 12 minutes enough time to go into a house and attack two unarmed people when you're armed, a male and a female, I think that would be relatively possible in less than 12 minutes, right?
Sure.
And if you agree that Kaylee and Maddie were asleep in the same bed and he went in while they were asleep without drama, right? He would have to go straight into that and attack them while they're asleep. So that would not take a long time, but it would take a lot of effort, right? It would take a lot of energy of the repeated. That's not a simple task. I know people think that it's just going through like butter, and unfortunately it does enough, but not. That's going to take a lot of force. You know, imagine just swinging a hammer or something that many times, because it was like 50 times on one and like 30 something times on the other, right?
Right.
So, if he went upstairs first, he wasn't seen by the people on the second floor. He went upstairs and they were asleep and he attacked them. And then on his way back down, he encountered one at a time and struggled with one and then struggled with the other. I think that would be enough time if during that time Dylan is hollering out the door and he knows that there's other people in the house. He's going to be rushed trying to get away, right? So that's the only way I see it playing out the way they say it did, within 12 minutes worth of time and him leaving Dylan, right? My mindset, the only way that I could see that Dylan would be close enough and see him and yell out and him not attack her as if he didn't know she was on that floor, didn't know she was there at that time or awake or whatever. And when she screamed, it startled him and he got tunnel vision to get the hell out of there, right? Forgot his sheath, whatever, and ran out. But that's the only way I see it with that time frame. But I do think it's possible because it doesn't take a lot of time to do the actions except for the struggles, the fights with the people downstairs. And I feel like the fights would put up a lot of noise. So, you know, I'm with you on that. The whole story can't go together. Like, Dylan couldn't have not heard what was going on outside and just thought they were partying or whatever. That's almost impossible to me.
Yeah, there's issues with all this, though. I mean, where does DoorDash fit into that scenario? So, did they come after he was already in the house?
No, they delivered the food.
Right.
So, maybe that's how he entered the house because there was no signs of forced entry, right? So, maybe DoorDash came, and when they went to the one door to get the food, he came in the other door and went upstairs. Like, have you seen the layout of the house? The way the sliding glass doors relative to the driveway and the front door where the DoorDash guy would have been?
Right. Yeah, I've seen that. And what strikes me with that, let's say he did this by himself, and let's say he was already in the house. Maybe he was upstairs. And if you remember right, or if I recall right, wasn't it Ethan had to be home at a certain hour? He wasn't allowed to stay there overnight due to the rules of his sorority. So I'm thinking maybe by the time Bryan was coming down the stairs, it was time for him to leave, and maybe him and Bryan ran into each other downstairs. Maybe that's how the second
That could,
or
yeah,
third victim came into play there.
that could be it. Or he could have been coming back inside from getting the DoorDash or something like that. But
So, I mean, this is why I think Dylan's more involved than everybody thinks. Because either way it cuts, even if we go with what you had said earlier, and even if you go with what I say now, there's no way she didn't hear that going
Yeah.
on in that house.
I agree. Yeah, fully.
So either she was giving him inside information on where everybody was at the time that he came in and went upstairs and then came back downstairs. Because, I mean, he passed her bedroom door three times, correct? So he came in, went up, came back down, and then he left, and that's when she says she seen him coming down the hallway.
Yeah. Yeah, he would have passed directly by it twice and been right beside her door a third time when he came back down the stairs. Yeah.
And then the other thing that sticks out with the whole story, I mean, you know, we're going off of what we're being fed, but
Exactly.
the other thing is I was a paramedic years ago, and you know, when you're in that field, you're trained to say certain things, and only a first responder or a police officer or a fireman would make the comment to somebody, "Don't worry, I'm here to help you." I don't see somebody coming in to kill somebody stop and say that to somebody. Those aren't words that just a normal person would approach somebody and say.
I agree. I don't think that whoever was in the house was necessarily normal, but normal presenting. Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's not. You
Yeah,
think?
I mean those are usually words, you know, that a professional or is trained, you know, trying to calm down a situation. It just kind of strikes me as very odd that comment was made. I mean, if it was made, I mean, I'm assuming, because this is, like I said, none of us really know what happened. We're only going off pieces that we get. But
Right. No, that was actually part of the affidavit, and
Right.
it said that she heard something she believed was, "It's okay, I'm here to help." It could have been anything else, but that's been my issue with her story the whole time, and why I was so hung up on Frozen Shock Phase when that first came out, was if she heard the bumping of what sounded like Maddie playing with her dog upstairs on a different floor, then when he comes downstairs and he meets two people who are awake and who are going to fight for their life on the same floor 30 feet away from her bedroom while she's awake, she's going to hear that too. Now, maybe she hears a lot of bumping around, thinks they're wrestling around playing or something, and yells out. I could give that benefit of the doubt for that. But then at some point, one of them dies and the other one isn't, right?
Correct.
So there's going to be something. There's going to be a scream, a shriek, a cry, something for him to say, "Oh, it's okay, I'm going to help you," or "I'm here to help you," or whatever. There's going to be something from that for him when he's going towards what I would assume to be Xana at that point, right? And it's just an assumption. I don't know the order of any of this taking place. I'm not trying to claim to, just the way my brain thinks about it. So there's going to be something. There's going to be a shriek. There's going to be a scream. There's going to be something there to tell Dylan that things are not okay. Not just another open the door and scream again. Right. And then when she opens the door and she sees a guy, well enough that you could make out the shape of his eyebrows. The fact that his eyebrows are thick at all, you have to be relatively close, right? And we know how close he has to walk past her door, and that's apparently when she saw him is when he walked by the door. So how does she not see him holding a 10-inch knife? He had no sheath, right? So he didn't put the knife away, or he would have known he didn't have his sheath. So she had to see that too. So she had to know something wasn't okay. If I just heard something where I felt like I had to scream, "Shut the F up," And then I open the door again because they're still making that noise. And there's some guy dressed all in black wearing a mask holding a knife. Has to be covered with blood, right? I mean, you have to have blood on you. And if you're close enough to see detail, even if it's dark, if you're close enough to me in the dark, I can see you, right? So she had to see these things and then go back in her room. When she goes back in her room, did she call the other the victims to see if they were okay, to see what the noises were, to see who that guy was that was just walking out? Did she anything, right? It doesn't make sense unless they say she was in shock. That was everybody's excuse. That's where frozen shock phase comes from. Where in the affidavit, the only time it says frozen shock phase is that she was in frozen shock phase as he walked by, right? So the affidavit didn't necessarily say that she didn't know anything had happened. It just says that she was in frozen shock phase as he walked by. He goes by, she shuts the door back, stays in her room until somebody else comes over there. There was a lot of rumors that said she had called somebody to come over there. And to me, that makes it feel like maybe she wanted somebody else to find them so that she wasn't the person who discovered them. And usually people who get into something like that, they don't want to be the person who discovers them because you're going to be the first suspect before information comes out.
Or she called people to come over there because she knew they would run into the house and,
and find it.
Contaminates the whole scene anyway.
That too. That could be, yeah. It's a party house. So
one of the biggest problems I have with her story is I've watched a lot of different clips, videos, and everything of this, and there was some kids that was stopped in a field across from that house that had body cams on, the police did. And there was a couple of shots that you could see from the body cam that was pointing towards the house, and you could see the lights go off in that house. So I find it very hard to believe that she gives a detailed description of somebody that's completely in the dark wearing all black about the same time this would all been going on.
Definitely. Yeah, I understand you. I feel like if you're in the dark and somebody's a couple feet away from you, you can see them, but bushy eyebrows, I feel like you would see their silhouette a lot better than you would see what their eyebrows were.
Yeah, I mean, I could get her saying the height of him. I could get her saying, dark clothing, maybe a shiny object in his hand, but a detailed description of bushy eyebrows. I mean, I can't wrap my thoughts around that to you.
I understand. I agree with you. I have so many questions about the Dylan Mortensen stuff, and then if this ID stuff comes out and it ends up being hers or Bethany's, that's just going to make it that much more. And I feel like it's almost more likely than not, in my opinion, because I feel like they would have said victims' IDs or that an ID connected to one of the victims rather than a resident of the house. I can't see why they wouldn't directly say it was a victim's if it was, but I can see why they wouldn't directly say it was a roommate's if it was. Does that make sense?
No, it makes absolute sense. I mean, if he comes up with either Dylan or Bethany's ID, then, I'm going to pretty much, in my mind, know that one of them's involved in it, if not both of them. I mean, Bethany, it's been crickets from her. You haven't heard a word out of anything, and nobody even knows if she was even in the house or where she was. But mysteriously, she shows up right about the time that, everybody else gets there and she's outside standing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, from what I understand, she was on the first floor. The report says she was on the first floor. But I could believe, like, this is something I stood up with at the beginning. I could believe that if Bethany was on the first floor, that she didn't hear anything. Because that second and third floor and the first floor, one's the original house and then there's an addition, right?
Right.
So there's gonna be soundproofing in the walls and stuff. It would be almost like upstairs and in the addition of a house. It's possible you could not hear people hollering or people saying something. I've seen where other people who used to live in that house when they went to school there said that people on the first floor, you couldn't hear what was upstairs. That's why everybody wanted the first floor rooms instead, because they didn't have to put up with all the partying going on upstairs all the time. It wasn't as bad. It wasn't as loud. So I could believe that if she was on the first floor, she didn't hear anything. And that's where I defended Dylan in the beginning also, because I thought they were both on the first floor. And yeah, it's possible they wouldn't have heard anything. But it's just so crazy that once it comes out she's on the second floor, and then there's so many, it's like 8.5 hours. 8.5 hours, that's a very long time to not call 911, for her to never go outside, never get, like, have to use the bathroom after a night of drinking and partying, to just, after seeing a man in a mask and presumably carrying some big shiny object, after hearing a bunch of ruckus and some guy saying, it's okay, I'm here to help, if she did indeed hear that, and you never go out to check on your roommates, your friends, supposedly, right? You never go check on them. 8.5 hours. I mean, maybe she was just really zooted out there on something and passed out afterwards because she was so drugged out she didn't even know what she had saw. But that would,
I don't know.
That's a stretch.
I find it hard to believe that she was that out of it. I mean, she could hear small statements and hear, the dog, and hear somebody playing with the dog, and then you're with Xana in there fighting for her life, getting her fingers severed off. I mean, you and I both know she probably screamed at the top of her lungs for help.
Exactly, yeah.
And Ethan was not a small guy, so he would have been yelling and fighting.
He would have put up a fight for sure.
So in her bedroom being less than 20 to 30 feet away from where that hallway was, where supposedly he was found in the doorway.
It might be, probably about 30 something feet. Yeah, that would make sense from the layout.
I mean, I don't know. The whole thing doesn't add up. I mean, either they put her in witness protection, and for all we know, she could have some kind of immunity deal or something going on we don't even know about. But there's no way she didn't hear that going on. I mean, no possible way.
Yeah, I agree there. I think she had to, especially if there are cameras from the neighbors that caught screams and stuff, then she had to have heard it, right? Because she's admitted to being awake. And I feel like a while ago when I was saying, unless she was just completely out of her mind, well, if she was that intoxicated, they wouldn't have been able to use anything from her for the reports. I didn't really think about that until after I said it.
Right.
Or even if they did use it in the report, that's kind of dirty, because they definitely won't be able to roll it into court.
Yeah, and if you go back on the timeline of all this, when they were tracking him and even knew the car and stuff that he was driving, I mean, they were on him pretty quick. So there was more than just the evidence that they came up with, and even matching the touch DNA and tracking him all the way to Pennsylvania before they finally arrested him. I mean, they were on him weeks before that. So that just tells me that there was some type of inside information that led them to him, which would have pointed right at Dylan.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to have all those questions answered. I always try to look at it from as many perspectives as I can. So I'll start thinking about, well, in what ways can she be innocent? Didn't know anything happened. There was nothing else nefarious going on around it. And it's almost impossible to really come up with a scenario that she wouldn't have heard the stuff or this or that. Like the only plausible thing that where there would be nothing. I don't want to say where she wasn't involved, because she might not have had anything to do with the actual murders that took place. She might have, she might not have. I don't want to accuse her of it, but I have a lot of questions, and the only answers to questions that I could come up with would be not good for her also, right? Like that she did discover that it had happened, but she waited to call the cops because of something else, or that she called everybody over, like somebody was there with her and that person committed the crime and she didn't know what to do, right? Like,
Right.
I could see situations like that where she didn't do it, but she also didn't identify the person immediately either. And that's another thing in the police report, in that arrest affidavit. The way they worded that she didn't know him, it seems like there's something going on with that. Maybe it's just my mind there, but the way they said she didn't immediately say that she did know him. So it never said she didn't know who he was. It just said she didn't immediately say that she knew who he was.
Right.
So I don't know if that reads like she knew who he was and she didn't tell him, or she didn't say that she knew who he was because she didn't know who he was.
Yeah. The other thing to that too is it's what, 7 hours, 45-minute timeline before anybody was notified. So, and then you take that information and then you look at, they're really not coming out with any blood that they found or anything in that car. It just makes me wonder, did he even leave at that hour? What time did he really leave there? I mean, could he have cleaned up in that house before he left?
Yeah, that really.
I mean, if you're going to take out 4 people like that, and that type of brutal, I mean, with a knife, there's going to be blood everywhere, all over you.
Yeah, 1 second. Melissa French. I'm sorry, I didn't never say hi. I added you to the stream though. Do you want me to add you back to it, or what would you like? Would you like to come up and talk too? Let me do that. And then if you don't want to yet, you can bump back off of it. I just want to make sure I didn't do that, or I didn't ignore you. How you doing?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I'm doing good. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
All I know is from the beginning of this case to now, like before anything started being leaked and the gag order was even issued, me and my husband were both like, there's something a lot more than meets the eye to this case. For sure, without all the rabbit holes and conspiracy theories.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a strange situation, right? And I don't think that it's just a regular person, or that this was just like, it's hard to think that this was a sporadic thing too, something this gruesome, and at the time frame and the way that they say it plays out.
Right.
It's hard to imagine that it was just this happened, so a chain reaction to where 4 people end up being murdered. It seems more like it was a planned attack that maybe got derailed when he met extra people that he didn't expect. Maybe he meant to see the 2 upstairs but not the 2 downstairs, or something like that. And that's
something had to be planned. There's no way it could have been orchestrated just by chance. No way.
Right, because they didn't even know Ethan would be there necessarily.
Yeah, and I mean, at the same token, when Haley and them live on social media, who's to say they didn't know that she was not going to be there either? So,
right.
Totally different off-topic subject. Remember when they were talking about Xana had defensive wounds, and a couple of them did, and then Ethan Chapin's was redacted?
Yeah. Ethan's was completely redacted. Like, it just said they found him in Xana's room and that's it. Everybody told me I was wrong, that they were redacting something else, but they had absolutely no information about Ethan on there.
I know that sometimes people like to copycat off of what other people have posted and streamed or what have you, but there's this gal, I don't know if you've ever heard of her, Elise, fan of Elise, 10 to Life.
Annie Elise, oh yeah, that's my favorite true crime YouTuber.
Yeah, okay, so have you seen the one that she just did April 7th with her inside source that discusses supposed alleged Ethan Chapin's redacted?
No, I haven't seen that.
Was that the one where they said the way his legs were cut?
Yeah, that one. Yep, that's the one.
Yeah, I've seen that one too, but I can't find it again, so I don't know if they took it off.
I have the link for it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, both legs were cut, and that he was in the hallway between the
his tendons and his Achilles and everything were cut, kind of like the movie House of Wax.
Right, all the way to the bones, what they said.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
What was it him or Xana? They said the neck was cut.
It was him.
Okay, yeah.
When did you say she had posted that?
April 7th.
Was
and it's a 58-minute video, and it's around the 50-minute marker is when she starts talking about it. So from 50 minutes to end is that whole thing. I put the link in the chat in the studio.
Okay, let's see. Because I'm not seeing it on her page at all, under videos.
There's one that's fans, not just, her normal page. It's fans. So fans of her.
Is it like members content?
No, let's see if I can.
Or let me find
my phone here and I can tell you. Hold on. Can you still hear me?
I can, yeah.
Okay, good deal. So it's fans, Annie Elise 10 to Life is what it is. So fans and then dash Annie Elise 10 to Life. Did you find it?
No, just the Annie Elise 10 to Life one.
Click on the link that I sent in chat, in the studio chat.
Oh, over here. Gotcha. Let me get to it where I can.
You'll find it that way. Did it work this time?
It's a Facebook link. It's coming up.
Yeah, it's a Facebook
just coming
link.
up
Yeah,
slowly.
I found it through Facebook. When I was just tired of browsing YouTube and there was nothing else that I had already not seen.
Okay, let's see.
People are wondering, of course, what was his motive? Did he have any connection to these 4 students? How did he evade police for so long? There are so many questions on everybody's mind. And with that, there's also a ton of information actually out there. Some official, some not official, and some that is just outright a little crazy and kind of a circus in my opinion. People making fake accounts, people making fake posts that are said to have come from him. So much out there that it's really hard to decipher what's real, what's not, what's rumor, what's reality. So today we're going to break it all down. We're going to talk about everything we know in the case up until this point. We're going to talk about what we know about Bryan, who he is,
Let's see, 50 minutes.
And the source of this article is a quote unquote.
Yeah, right at the 50-minute marker.
All right, we'll start at 49.43.
All are wearing gloves in grocery stores. And guys, please don't get political on here. I'm just talking as an example. Easily to explain that away, depending on where they found the DNA and the cells and, you know, all of that goes along with it. Could he explain his DNA in the house? It was a party house. I had been there before. My sister had partied there once before, which I don't know if that's true, guys. But yeah.
I mean, I'm with what she's saying so far. Like I'm completely with that. There are reasonable explanations for why certain things are.
Right. I'm right there too.
It's just when there becomes so many of them, it's like, am I making excuses for it now? You know?
Yeah, I had been in the house. That's why my DNA was there.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I mean,
Sure. Explain that away.
There's excuses.
Reasonable doubt.
There's,
That's the key.
conspiracy,
Reasonable doubt.
There's grasping at
I own an
straws,
Elantra.
and there's
Of course
just flat out, like, bullshit.
Yeah. I mean, the real question, I guess, is does it introduce reasonable doubt, right? Because that's what's going to matter for him in court.
I didn't ever go to Pullman or Moscow, but I used to live about 45 minutes to an hour from Moscow. I used to live in Idaho, so.
Oh, wow.
I'm familiar with the area and what have you. As far as people like bringing up cartel and all that kind of stuff, the midpoint is Centralia, Washington. That's the midpoint for all that crap, and then it just exerts from Seattle, Spokane to Pullman and Moscow from there. Outside of that, that's pretty much the hub is Centralia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
so, I mean, there is like a...
I had a friend that lived in Centralia, and she couldn't get out of there any faster with her family, so I'm glad she got out of that shit. Centralia's a pretty bad place.
Is that like Murder Mountain and Grow, where they're growing field, like their grow fields and stuff up there in the mountains and stuff? Is that what it stems from? Or
Centralia is like mini cartel hub. It's not even like Eureka or California grow fields. We're talking like all the hardcore shit, like coke and all that crap.
Wow.
Yeah, and the fentanyl and all that shit. I moved from Spokane, Washington, down to Georgia almost 2 years ago, and we left because me and my husband went to bed every night with semi-automatic gunfire, and we actually almost lost our lives from someone trying to break into our RV, and yeah, it's just the Pacific Northwest is not a good place anymore, really, at all.
Yeah, that's wild. Now, I guess that's why Wrangler Star is so prepared, huh? The forestry service guy, but he's from where, like, right outside of Portland, Oregon. He's always making these videos of his tactical, like, what do they call them? Prepper content. But he's like a homesteader or whatever, but he's also a prepper.
My husband
hilarious.
was Marine, and my father was Marine, and so, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a doomsday prepper, but I
try to
like
be prepared.
I'd be all right for when shit hits the fan.
Yeah, as prepared as you can be, I guess. I would want to be as. I feel like I'm okay for that, but yeah, hopefully we don't have to find out. That's crazy though that it would be that bad in Idaho. That you were going to sleep to semi-automatic gunfire, like
that was Washington State.
Oh,
right,
Washington.
right next to Idaho. So you got right up the state line. You have Newport, Washington, and Old Town, Idaho, and it was right there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but where we used to live in Priest Lake, we used to live up on the mountain, and that was kind of like the community that you don't go up there unless you know somebody, and shit hits the fan. You know, we had our designated, you close off this section of the road, and you got that section of the road, and, the cops didn't even go up there at all. So it was nice outside of, besides the 20 feet of snow.
Yeah, I can't do the cold. I'm not a cold person. I'm from Alabama, North Alabama at that. So like it gets cold here maybe like 2 months, and by cold I mean like 30 to, I mean it gets cold sometimes, like down into the teens, but not often. Most of the time we're cold in the 30s.
Outside of leaving, the Pacific Northwest because of all the violence and, the crime and what have you, 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago, I got severe frostbite on my hands and my feet, and they almost cut my 2 fingers off on my right hand, and it took 4 months for my hands to heal, 4.5 months for my feet to heal, and so I can't do the cold anymore either. And I've enjoyed my no snow Christmases the last couple of years. It's been very nice. We have about, 5-6 weeks of cold, and that's about it. And then it's like 70s, 80s, 90s all year round, the rest of it.
All right. So it is, you said right around the 50-minute mark she was going to talk about the Ethan's redacted stuff, right?
Right, yeah, she's going to read the text message from her source, around the 50-minute mark. Yep.
All right.
That's when it starts.
All right, let's check that out.
Like that, but why? That has nothing to do with anything. They lit it up with luminol. There was no blood in there. There was no evidence in there. So what if I have that car? I wasn't in hiding. I just wasn't paying attention. I didn't know all of these things. Which, now that I say that part out loud, though, it is interesting.
The only thing that doesn't coincide is instead of the knife sheath being with Maddie, the person said it was with Ethan, but the Ethan stuff that was redacted would have happened to him. That part makes sense. The only thing that was foobarred was the sheath part, but you can't expect everything to be 100% solid without little tidbits of interference.
Right, but it would make a lot more sense about the knife sheath if it was beside Ethan, because if it's beside Maddie, that would mean that he carried the knife sheath in his hand until he went in there and then sat it down and did what he did to somebody with as little resistance as you get from 2 sleeping drunk girls, right? And then he leaves it there and comes downstairs. Where if it's Ethan, he's fighting with him. He's wrestling. He's fighting for his life. It's a lot more plausible that a sheath could be ripped off somebody's hip.
You really want to go down the rabbit hole is someone on T-Rev's show, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before or something, she sent a picture of Kohberger's old girlfriend that overdosed from when they did heroin, and she's almost a spitting image of this picture of Xana. They have both dark brown hair, both brown eyes, what have you, and she said, this is my theory of what if Xana didn't go out the front door to get the DoorDash, she walked out the sliding glass door, walked around, and that's when he took his opportunity to go into the house and took care of them first, and then Maddie and Kaylee after that.
That's possible.
So.
And he was in interrogation after the arrest before he lawyered up. He said to police, of course I know what's going on. I live 10 miles away from where this happened, or whatever he had said. Which, so it's like, if he vocalized how aware he was of this case, then he certainly would have known that they had been looking for the Elantra. So why wouldn't he say, hey, I have an Elantra, I just want to let you know, heads up, whatever that may be. So that's an interesting piece, which I'm just now thinking through myself. Now, in regards to the text that I mentioned earlier and that information, as I mentioned, this was somebody who is very close to me, who I trust wholeheartedly, and this person is good friends with someone very close to the investigation. So this person shared some text screenshots with me that contain some pretty horrific.
Bring up Papaka and what have you. I mean, JLR, he tried to request records, public records on the Papaka thing, and he got refused. Because it's still an active investigation. Now, why would it still be active if the situation was diffused? You know what I mean? Kind of weird.
Yeah, that is weird, because that was back in December, and you would think that, I mean, I understand they would have to have an outside police force come and investigate it, but that wouldn't take that long if...
Month 4 of the next year.
Right,
that's quite some time,
When did he request it?
He posted that video about requesting it a couple days ago, and I think he requested it like last week or some shit. So
Damn. So
I
it's
don't know
still
if
like
he,
right now.
Did you know that they're refusing that?
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That could be a tie.
I mean, at that point, it's definitely a rabbit hole of why is it still an active investigation? You know, there's in my opinion, why should there still be, if not something?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Horrific details that not only we haven't heard before, but that
there's
make this case make a lot more sense. And I don't want to say the case itself and why this happened, but certain details we've heard along the way, it starts to kind of tie it all together a little bit more, for me at least. I want to warn you, these details are graphic and
Yeah,
very
it's definitely
disturbing.
weird.
Also, as always, do your own research, because until this is officially tied back to the affidavit once it's released, it is all alleged at this point. But this message says...
What was that? What was that?
Do you know about the Wilsons?
I don't know about the Wilsons.
Oh man.
Right.
So the Brady and Giglio thing that went down about Gunderson and Nunez, they falsified when they had two people in custody, and that was his sons, Doug Wilson's sons, and Doug Wilson, they're part of the Christ Church, and they own over half of Moscow, Idaho. And he is very old school with, you know, the women do as they're told, you know, don't say no. So with how Kohberger is and how he is against women, someone, I don't know if it was, you know, vetted or not, but someone said, what if, since Doug Wilson is kind of like, you know, the, not just the pastor mentor or what have you, he's also a therapist for his congregation. What if he was Kohberger's therapist? And I'm like, well, that would be pretty messed up and make a lot of sense on a few different aspects. You should look up the Wilsons.
Yeah, I'll check them out here in a little bit. I'm gonna listen to what she says about the Ethan stuff real quick though. I need to get an understanding of that. Does she talk about it from 50 minutes till the end at 58 minutes, or is it just a small part? Okay.
50 minutes to the end.
Okay.
My sister's best friend from college is married to an FBI agent. He was one of the first FBI agents allowed at the scene in Moscow. Apparently, the murderer's knife sheath was found under the body of Ethan. They were able to find DNA on the sheath and sent it to 23andMe. A cousin of the killer, aka Bryan, has done 23andMe, so they were able to somehow then link it to Bryan. That, plus a cat, happened to be taking a pee and set off a nearby ring camera, which is where they were able to see the Hyundai Elantra, which of course the suspected killer drove. They then tracked him to Pennsylvania, where he was home on winter break with family, and agents posed as garbage men and went through the family's garbage to find DNA and confirm the DNA match. From the text message my sister received from the FBI.
There we go. Okay, let me back this up a little bit to start over. It froze up on me. I couldn't get it to work right. But now we'll listen to it real quick. Let's away from that. All right.
Graphic and very disturbing. Also, as always, do your own research, because until this is officially tied back to the affidavit once it's released, it is all alleged at this point. But this message says, my sister's best friend from college is married to an FBI agent. He was one of the first FBI agents allowed at the scene in Moscow. Apparently, the murderer's knife sheath was found under the body of Ethan. They were able to find DNA on the sheath and sent it to 23andMe. A cousin of the killer, aka Bryan, has done 23andMe, so they were able to somehow then link it to Bryan. That, plus a cat, happened to be taking a pee and set off a nearby ring camera, which is where they were able to see the Hyundai Elantra, which of course the suspected killer drove. They then tracked him to Pennsylvania, where he would...
Okay, so she just said that a cat peeing triggered the camera, and that's how they were able to see the Elantra.
Was home on winter break with family, and agents posed as garbage men and went through the family's garbage to find DNA and confirm the DNA match. From the text message my sister received from the FBI agent, apparently it is one of the most gruesome crime scenes he's ever been a part of. Ethan's legs were sliced all the way down to the hamstrings. One of the girls was stabbed 54 times and beaten so badly that every bone in her face was broken and so sunken in that she was unrecognizable.
Okay, see, that part doesn't make a lot of sense to me there, because if we're talking about stabbing, and that's a lot of stab wounds, and then a struggle with the two downstairs, and that's going to take up some time. So to think he had time to physically beat somebody in that same time frame, either before or after stabbing them, I feel like that's not gonna fit in that time frame unless there's more time going on than we know about. The time frame that they have, there's no way that would be that. And she said here, just so everybody's clear, I know that there was a little bit of back and forth there for a minute, but she did say that this was somebody she trusted that told her this, but do your own research because none of it is verified. So she's not making claims, she's just repeating what was told to her. She's always really clear about that when she says stuff. Like, she's telling the story of how she understands it, but she's not stating anything as completely fact. And the knife sheath part, it would make more sense if it was found with Ethan, because that would at least make sense that it could have got knocked off in a struggle, ripped off in a struggle, because it's going to take a lot of force to rip a leather knife sheath loose, especially a K-bar knife sheath. K-bar knives like that, they're not cheap knives. Those aren't like Walmart sheaths that are faux leather with one stitch going through. Those things are, nice sheaths. So it would make more sense if it was that, but as far as we know, and according to the report, the sheath was found beside Maddie.
One of the cops said that one of the girls in the basement who survived went by the staircase and she thought it was Ethan and yelled at him to shut the fuck up, but it was actually the killer. The killer then left after he saw her, but she didn't know it was him though at the time. Now obviously, a lot to unload there.
Alright, so that's saying that Dylan saw him but didn't know that he was the killer at the time. Yeah. That lines up at least.
Let me start by saying the details of Ethan and being sliced down to his hamstrings do match what Kaylee's dad said about this being gruesome and sadistic. Also, we know that the coroner had made...
Kaylee's dad said that it was a hell of a battle going on the second floor. That they put up a fight. That's why it makes no sense that Dylan wouldn't have known what was going on right outside of her bedroom.
Made those comments about it not being traditional stab wounds, but more in line with being tears and gashes. These details also explain why the police began looking for an Elantra specifically, because of that ring camera footage. Now, you may be asking like I did, well, if Bryan saw the roommates, and if the roommate yelled out to him, why didn't he kill her too? But I think it could be for a multitude of reasons. Based on the layout of the house, which we know is odd and kind of had everybody questioning from the beginning what floor was technically which, I think that he may not have known that anybody lived on that basement level. So I think it's possible that he was spooked and fled. If it were dark and she just yelled up the staircase in the dark saying, shut up, Ethan, without truly seeing each other or making eye contact, he could have easily snuck away. I also think it's entirely possible that he was physically exhausted after brutally murdering 4 people. And
now, yeah, he would definitely be physically exhausted, but there's no, she's on the second floor, she heard this stuff, and she didn't know what happened. I mean, sure, you're not thinking, right? Like we can be reasonable here and say that if you're in your bedroom and you live in a party house and you're used to them making noise, your first thought when you hear noise isn't going to be somebody's broke in and is stabbing my roommates. Of course not, right? But when you keep hearing it and it's a dogfight for their life going on right outside your door, and then you hear it enough that it makes you open the door, and then you see somebody walking out that is going to be exhausted, that is probably covered in blood, because it's not like that they're saying these were strategic, snuck up behind the back and did something where you would stay clean. Like, he's going to be covered, right? Unless he changed clothes or had an overlayer on and pulled it off before he started to go out. But that wouldn't make a lot of sense either, because if that was the case, he wouldn't have done all that stuff without going to attack the person that he also knows is there. And if he was in like I gotta get out of here tunnel vision to get out, and that's why he's not worried about the girl who opened the door as he walked by and saw him, if that's the case, he wouldn't have been changing clothes. So he had to be, it's just no way. Like, she had to know what had happened when she saw him walk out, when she heard everything going on. To me, there's no way that she didn't know.
Chose to flee rather than go downstairs and risk multiple people being down there, being caught by them, or being overpowered and killed himself, or them calling 911 and then him getting caught. I would think better to flee than to walk downstairs into a situation that is unknown if you don't know how many people are down there. And him fleeing could also explain why the knife sheath was left behind and then later found. Maybe he was in a rush and it was sloppy.
See, no, that's backwards to me, though, kind of, because if the knife sheath was with Maddie, as the PCA says, right, then you would have to think that he did the stuff on the second floor and then went up and did that on the third floor. So why would he be rushed in a hurry to get out from that, but not from the full-fledged fight for his life that he had on the second floor? So he had to go upstairs first, right? Like, it would only make sense in my mind. It would only make sense. But maybe not. Maybe he encountered them on the way in. Maybe he, home invasion style, knocked on the door and one of them on the second floor opened it and he attacked them there. And then it wouldn't make sense because of the layout of the house, though. Like, it doesn't, I don't see a way that it wasn't starting on the third floor, coming down to the second floor, and then out the door. But if the sheath was left up there, then he couldn't have left it while he was fleeing. But her source is saying that the sheath was with Ethan anyway. So that is very interesting, though. But it was definitely redacted. Things about Ethan were redacted from that PCA, because what I shared it. There's a video up if you guys want to check it out completely. I read the whole thing word for word and showed it to you so you can read along. But that PCA, it the way it stated, oh my goodness, my mind, I just lost it. Oh, let's just do this.
Police also announced right away, very early on in all of this, the type of weapon that they were looking for, that it was a K-bar knife, or however you pronounce it. And surely you would be able to learn, based on the wounds, what kind of weapon was used. But if the sheath was left behind, that also, in my opinion, would be a very quick way to identify what kind of weapon was used. Because they...
Okay, now I remember what I was saying. So, the PCA clearly said that it was redacted once it got to Ethan's body found and then redacted, and then it had the coroner sign off on it, right? But we had more information on the other victims and the situations around them. Not a whole lot more, but more than what we got from Ethan was just in Xana's room laying in a doorway, right? So the redacted parts of it had to do with Ethan. It had to. When I printed it off, in that video that I did post for it, I skipped a whole page that was redacted in between because it finished here. It said redacted across an entire page of the report. And then the next page had the coroner's office and stuff on top of it. So when the officers are walking through and looking at the scene in Xana's room, that's where the redaction was. Where Ethan's information would be is where the redaction was. So I fully buy into this idea. If you do end up going to that video, if you haven't seen it, and you go watch that video and listen to that PCA and listen to my thoughts on it, then I make it very clear that there's a whole skip page here that I'm not showing you because it just says redacted. So that's very believable that there was a lot more about Ethan in that PCA.
They identified the weapon and said that they were looking for that type of weapon almost immediately. It wasn't after any autopsies. It wasn't after anything like that. It was right away. So I would think you would have to either know on sight that that's the kind of weapon that would cause those type of wounds, or
not a chance.
If you see the sheath that those are often stored in left behind, you would automatically know that that was the kind of weapon that was used.
Exactly. So right there, I don't care how trained you are. You're not going to look at gouges and wounds and cut marks without doing some legitimate testing and just know what type of weapon caused it and know that it was a K-bar, right? K-bar is specific, very specific. Now there are different types of K-bars, but the K-bar that they described is the most common, right? They've got some crazy K-bars, but there's no way you're looking at a wound and saying that this was a K-bar knife versus a Walmart survival knife. There's no way. Not until you run tests or you have some type of evidence to show that, like a K-bar sheath laying beside them. And then you can go in and verify that, right? But no chance there was somebody who just looked at it and knew. So,
like I said, I have no reason to believe that this person would lie or fabricate things, as they are the least dramatic person I know, don't follow true crime, haven't been following any of the craziness in this case, but please make a judgment yourself. I also think that the stab wound number being 54 is very specific. It's a very detailed, specific number to give and to provide. And with so much of the conversation in the beginning of this case and still being that the wounds were not equal and that this appeared targeted, that also would make a lot of sense. So again, make a judgment yourself, and if this is all technically alleged until it...
Alright, so that's all I'm gonna do of that, because I don't, check her out. That's on Facebook. I didn't know she posted like content on Facebook that wasn't on YouTube, so I guess I need to start checking that out. But yeah, that's one of my favorite. When I don't know about a case, when I don't know about something and I want to catch up on it, that's where I'm going, to her videos, because she will give you details. She will give you the story of what was said, and she'll give you the story of what is verified, and she separates the two. And that's important for me, because there's a lot of people who just, well, this happened and this happened and this happened and it couldn't be that because of this, when they're saying it like it's verified, but it's not. It's just rumors. Oh, wait. But I think I am getting close to getting off of here. What time is it? Oh my goodness, yeah. Yeah, guys. I think I'm about to call it a night. Anybody have any questions or anything you want to say to me or ask me real quick in chat before I head out for the night? Bernice Rivera. That's why the lady judge from Washington told them to amend it and not use the DNA on the sheath. That's true. That's something we haven't talked about a lot on this channel yet. The discussion over don't put this in the report, redact this, take this out, don't use this for that. It's a little too late and complicated for me to try to get into and keep it all straight tonight, but we will do that probably Friday. My work schedule changed, and that's why I haven't been coming live very often for the last week, 2 weeks or so. My nephew had a wreck, my cousin passed away, work's been different, but I'm off on Fridays now. I work 10-hour shifts now, so I don't get home till later Monday through Thursday, but I'm off Friday, Saturday, and Sunday now, so that's more time to actually be able to come in here and set. Thank you, Mama Stormy, for that link. I'm gonna make sure I edit the description of this live stream too to put her info in there and the link to that video because, you know, she deserves it. But I hope everybody has a good night. Thank you, Paige. I appreciate that. Did you see Mama Stormy put the link to Tend the Life's video? Is that the video you were asking for? Rustin Crane. I think the ID is going to tell us a lot. If it's a victim's ID, he's guilty, and it's as seems. If it's Dylan's ID, well, they have some splaining to do. I agree, Rustin. I agree. If it's either roommate's ID. Now, even if it is, like I said in those videos, if it is the roommate's ID, it's a chance that they could have been the target or they, you know, there's a chance, you know, anything is possible. What's probable, though, right? And I'm right there with you on that. Oh, thank you, Susu. I'm glad you thought it's been a wonderful live. I've had fun. I hope you guys have enjoyed it like I have. And before I get off here, if anybody wants to join, become a member, the link's down in the description. If you're not subbed to the channel, I would appreciate it if you did. The link for that is in the description, or you can just go to the channel. Hit the like button for me if you don't mind. It really helps to push out to more people. That's about it. I am about to crash. I will see you all tomorrow. And have a good night.